kind of small. Let me see if I can change. You can see me now, I'm guessing, right? Confirm that I'm here. I'm not just a figment of my own imagination. I'm going to change my angle here of the camera a little bit. There we go. Hey, party people. It's called Troubleshooting on the Fly. You guys can confirm you can see me before I launch in, maybe. That'd be great. Let me turn off the topic notes. You see it. Thanks, Radar. Appreciate it. Timer. Turn that off. Turn off the title. Cool. So, hey, everyone. Thanks for showing up. Those of you who have sat through the first couple of minutes of me fumbling around and getting the video to reconnect, thank you. We don't have a fancy circle video. We'll have to deal with a square video showing some background. Oh, well, that's okay. So tonight, as always, I'm doing the Monday night live stream, or the once a week live stream, focused on the general topic of neurofeedback and chill, how to do some neurofeedback, how do we go after some brain health topics. And tonight I thought I would review a few topics that are popping up in the scientific research in the past few weeks that are all bearing on both aging and sort of biohacking strategies. So, hey, Joe Barr. Is that like Foo Bar? Joe Barr? Your programmer? Hello. So let me do some neurofeedback. As usual, I tend to talk about something regarding neurofeedback and biohacking. Tonight we'll touch on 3 different topics in the literature. One of them has to do with how there's hints that the auditory system may be directly related to how quickly we age cognitively. The second is looking at some lipid markers in the blood that seem to be really strongly predictive for cognitive health and aging. And it's not the simple ones around insulin resistance and things like that. It's a really interesting selective biomarker that seems to have high predictive value. And the third thing we'll talk about tonight is an AI machine learning computerized analysis that seems to be able to distinguish different versions of the Parkinsonian categories. And those are often misdiagnosed or can be hard to distinguish. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well. Aha, it is a Foo Bar, so gotcha. Well, I'm glad I passed the reference. Is it a cursor? Is it a fixed pointer? We'll have to see. So let me bring up some neurofeedback. I think tonight, last week I did some HEG, and I had a lot of people ask me directly and offline about HEG. So I think I'd do it again tonight. Let me drop my headset. And you guys may remember that HEG is blood flow training or infrared signals. So it's a sensor that's like this, that's essentially infrared cameras. And it's going to pick up an ambient and a baseline. Sorry, an ambient and a depth signal. This particular one uses a thermocouple style attachment. I think tonight we'll use a UWiz from Pocket Neurobics. It has a little socket on the end there. So the first thing I'm going to do is plug this thing into USB because it's not mounted right now. You'll see the lights will come on. So as the lights come on, one of the things about a Wiz device is the lights tell you what's happening. So you can see that there's a blue light on, which means, and it's solid, so it's in transmit mode. And then the mode light was green for a second and has gone off. It'll flash every 4 seconds or so. It'll show us that it's sort of in standby mode. I've had to figure all this out recently, writing drivers for these devices on my computer. So now I know deeply all the different modes they have. So the green light flashing every so often is a waiting to be put into mode. And I also have this infrared sensor, which I'm going to plug into the headset in a second. Here we go. Now, one nice thing about the Pocket Neurobics amps is that, they're going to work? Yeah, it's good enough in the middle. Is when we plug the device in, it should auto sense. So we should see a different light pattern pop up. Let's see. Is that happening? It is. See, the blue light is flashing now. So that's actually HEG calibrate mode. So on device, it's doing a baseline. We also have the link light has gone solid, basically. I believe that's about the type of signal being passed through. The whiz amps have an EKG mode, a pulse mode, an EEG mode, an HEG mode, all in the chip. And so the UWIZ combines all of that, although my hunch is there's an NIR HEG mode inside there, but they don't have an NIR HEG socket on these amps. So if you really like the passive, the near infrared, little blue headbands, then you'll have to use a different amp. But so far the amp is picking this up. You can see that my transmit light has gone off again, which means the amplifier has baselined. Let me bring up BioExplorer, which is the software we're going to use for this. Here we go. Okay, so this is BioExplorer. And let me make myself just a wee bit smaller off to the side, maybe. Yeah, I'll do that. Cool. All right, so we have a weirdly truncated image right here, little animation, and then a grid on the right. Now, a couple things. I wanted to do HEG again, if for no other reason, because it can be a little bit squirrely to set up in BioExplorer. And so what I'm going to do first is point out this thin black bar here at the top. You see that it says in yellow letters, the PN-Wiz on COM3, but then next to it, it says no port. Well, guess what that means? There's no USB COM port being picked up. Now, the software itself is in HEG mode. It says CH1 is blue. That means it's in HEG mode. But I bet if we look at the driver panel, which is hanging out somewhere, where'd it go? Let me see where the little gray window is. There's a little gray window that should pop up when the amplifier is seen. And I don't see that little gray window anywhere. So that might mean that the amplifier is not seen. So that's probably because it's not in the right port. So I'm going to right click on port, go to properties. I'm going to look for other COM ports. Oh, I see one. This is COM5. Change it, hit apply. And now you can see that the PN-Wiz says connected in green. And suddenly we actually get a signal transmission rate of 160 BPS. CH1 is still blue. So where's that little driver window? I don't see it. Let me do this. I'm going to quit and relaunch BioExplorer because it'll force the little window to come up. Here it is. Okay, so there it is in the upper left. All right, so we have this little window. This is the control window for BioExplorer itself, like a driver basically. And so it's in EEG mode for link refs, but it goes back into that mode, I believe, by default. Let's put it in calibrate. You can see now that that little CH1 that was blue is now flashing. The amplifier little blue light is also flashing. And that'll go stable in a minute. There it goes. And so now essentially the CH1 is stable as well. HEG calibrate is gone. And now it says link refs again. And the second row says HEG. If the amplifier wasn't plugged in, the power goes off. Here, I'll show you. It should be smart enough. So I unplugged the amp and power went off on its own. So it kept the modes, but it says PN-Wiz no port again. If I plug it back in, it chimed at us. Give it a second. It reconnected automatically. Oh, and it auto-calibrates again. I didn't know that. That's cool. Gotta love the Wiz. They're a little hard sometimes to get the manuals on, but they work really well. Okay, so I'm in HEG mode now, and I'm going to go back to the main BioExplorer window, and I'm going to open up a design file. That's what a training set of parameters is. Open up my HEG design I've created. I have a little animation here on the left. You could always change that. Right-click, go to properties. You could add one. Any little animations or GIFs work. Like anything cool in here? I don't think so. Just to show that it can be different, we'll use the walking robot. And we will move the there we go. Okay, so I'm not sure how this is going to look. We'll see how our little robot looks. All right, so I've got my signal going. It's been calibrated. The timer says 7 minutes. That's fine. I'm going to hit play. Okay. So you can see what it's doing, taking the animation, just driving it back and forth. That's kind of annoying. Let me change that to my rising ball. I was trying to be fancy. It doesn't work. So you can see, though, you could use lots of things. But all right, so for those of you for whom this is the first time you've seen HEG, the pink line is measuring heat, essentially. And I've tied the ball animation to it. I've scaled it because it's not quite as much of a range. And I've also tied it to an audio generator, which runs through the pentatonic scale up and down, and the direction of the scale is based on the direction of the change in your brain activity or your heat. And so in this case, my heat is kind of fluctuating there at the bottom. If I think happy thoughts or concentrate, or it's like try to think something really, really hard, I get a surge. If I relax again, maybe I'm pleased with myself, it'll go up again. I'll be happy. Yeah, I'm a little pleased with myself, and I got a voluntary response. So the HEG, the hemoencephalography signal, is measuring passive heat coming off my head. And it's not exactly like other forms of neurofeedback because it is semi-voluntary. So generally, when you think of EEG neurofeedback, you're measuring stuff you can't feel and can't really voluntarily control your brain waves. And so it's this passive shaping process. That's how we do it in a thresholded way. Right now, this is a continuous signal, and I'm not thresholding. I'm not only providing rewards when I get information. I'm just doing the training session on the continuous heat coming off my head. And so there is a semi-voluntary component where you would like exert and then hope it surges or try to make it surge in response to focus, like this. Now it's not gonna, right? I'm also looking at it like through a viewfinder instead of on the full screen. Let me pull the full screen back up. All right. Now make it go up. There we go. And again. There we go. And again. Come on. There we go. I must be tired. I'm having trouble making multiple surges in a row. But you can see I made one surge. Here we go. Another surge. Happy thoughts. There it goes. So these are little blood flow surges in response to me thinking happy thoughts. But you may have noticed there's a bit of a lag. And that's not the software. Whoops. That's not the software. That is BioExplorer. Sorry, it's not BioExplorer. It's my brain, and not just my brain. Our brains lag with blood flow by about 1 or 2 seconds after we exert or after we have a metabolic demand. There's a surge of heat that follows. So that's what we're picking up. And the surge will happen about 2 seconds after we have a strong thought or a focus, maybe a little faster sometimes. Let me do a little, right now I'm back to looking at a viewfinder. It's not much bigger for me as it is for you. Here we go. So you can see I'm getting these little surges here and there. And when I get more animated or think happy thoughts or focus, I can make it surge larger. If you keep doing that over time, you'll get more stability, and it tends to work really well for reducing the incidence and severity of things like migraines. It also seems to goose social function in people with spectrum needs. So it's an interesting tool to have in your neurofeedback box. This device is invented by a guy named Dr. Jeff Carman, who invented it for, I think, mostly migraines. And he has some great infrared photography showing a big perfusion change after a few minutes of this with migraineurs. And I keep threatening to do an actual article and a review of HEG, but I'm working on some software to replace the slightly clunky stuff here, and I want to wait until I have good software to really show you guys. But this is my brain in real time, but in a temperature signal, not an electrical signal. So it has different characteristics. You can use it with no gel and paste. It's not sensitive to movement. This is not really movement. This is me like, you know, getting happy that I'm showing you something maybe. So a kid who's like flexing and rocking or stimming, it works fine for. Or an elder who doesn't want to put up with being poked and prodded, it works fine for. So migraines is a big goal for this. It also boosts the impact of EEG training. So you can warm the brain up with this and then train the EEG and get increased impacts. Some people really love this training. Most people, it's pretty subtle, the effects. and they mostly notice it when they combine it with other things. So, hey guys, El Chatterino, nice to see you. Radar Ashwood, first time you're seeing this HEG design for BioExplorer. Thank you. It's my here. I'll show you. I'll give you a little peek. So again, it's a simple animation on the left with a GIF. It's a simple signal diagram on the right, and there's really nothing to it because it's continuous. The only trick, and I'll show you. I'll show you how the sausage is made. The only trick is that I'm doing. If you notice, this threshold isn't actually tied to much. See, it goes to a CD player, which is not enabled. So basically, I'm doing a little bit of scaling here. Essentially, I'm not using any of the baselining buttons. I'm just doing a little bit of scaling. And then I'm tying it to a MIDI object and a video player. And the MIDI object is using a vibraphone, pentatonic minor, and you can change the scale. Here, let's change it from F sharp to A. Rocking out. It's kind of silly. Let me put it back in F sharp. What? No audio? What happened? I might have broken it. Oh no, there's a scaling thing that happened apparently. It must have baseline. I think the ample baseline, if there's enough change, it'll trigger a baseline on its own. So I could baseline it manually right now. Yeah, I can see it's flashing. Looks like it might have fallen out of, oh no, it's in transmit mode. Let me quickly re-baseline it. Actually, I might not have to. I think it's just scaling. Yeah. There it goes. Come on, come on, come on. Little surge. Yeah, I think it's scaling. I think when I changed to the signal diagram, I broke the scaling of the video display object. I'm not that surprised. BioExplorer is kind of weird. Oh, it's also over the time. Huh. Went to 100. So I must have changed the sensitivity and changed the scaling when I showed you the background. Anyways, that's BioExplorer, and that is HEG. Yeah, there's audio. It may be in the background. It's not super loud. It was going ding, 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 as things went up and down. And that's just to give people an extra thing to do. I've also had people use this a fair amount with their eyes closed if they have migraines. My favorite use personally of this tool is to shut down a migraine that's starting to threaten. I get like visual distortions, and I can tell that, oh, okay, I'm getting a little weird visual stuff happening. That means my vision's going to deteriorate for the next half an hour to 45 minutes. Then my vision will start to clear up and pain will start and, migraine process. But if I grab this before things are fully entrenched, I can ramp the distortions back down and the migraine doesn't show up. And using it a couple of days in a row kind of banishes the migraine for that cycle. So I really enjoy HEG. Trying to find ways to bring this tool more to people, but for now anyways, you need an amp that can support it. So a Pocket Neurobics amp or a Neurobit Optima, PIR, HEG, passive infrared, just a camera essentially, from Dr. Jeff Carmen. And then BioExplorer or BioEra. It works pretty well in BioEra as well. You'll have to configure it a little bit more thoroughly. BioEra is a little harder to use than BioExplorer. And BioExplorer is not the easiest to use either. So you might be on your own if you're rolling up with these tools. But if you're working with me, I'll share the designs we have here for BioExplorer as well. I still use BioExplorer every so often for EEG, but mostly when I have a kid who won't sit still for videos. And these days I've been playing with videos with Eager as well, with the Zucore Media Player. So guys, thanks for showing up tonight, and thanks for watching me do a little bit of HEG. I wanted to talk about 3 different aging things now that we've had a little bit of fun with brain training, now that I'm all warmed up, 20 minutes into our hour. So the first thing that came out in the past couple of weeks was a study showing, maybe yesterday, day before yesterday, that was published. But the idea is that there are changes with aging in hearing. And they looked at the different amount of hearing loss and the brain signal of the variability of the auditory tissue and the brain tissue picking up the signal, essentially was able to map to the outside world really well. So the more variability in the signaling, the better recognition of speech sounds. And they found that with aging and with hearing loss, there's an increased amount of brain tissue activated to try to do that job. And as you go up in background noise, so if you have some hearing loss, you're already using more brain tissue to try to parse out the information. And with the background noise being elevated, suddenly people couldn't recognize speech the same way. There was a deterioration of language processing and speech recognition specifically under background noise conditions once the auditory signal variability that I mentioned, once that starts to dampen, it seems to cause other cascade effects. We've always known that hearing loss tends to accelerate other aspects of aging, and there's arguments and ideas about it being about a change in pro-social behavior or connections, or it's just an epiphenomenon. It just happens to happen in elders as they get old. But this is the first study I've seen in a while that suggests that some of the mechanism of the brain not remaining as sensitive to pull signals out of background variable information also goes along with the brain not being as good at pulling in information at all from that transducer. So there's a brain efficiency signal that comes along with the hearing loss issue itself. And that seems to also correlate strongly with a loss of language processing, speech processing in that information. Even if you can still hear it, the speech itself becomes more difficult. So that's interesting. I think we'll learn more about that area of aging and research at some point soon. I also want to talk tonight about a cool thing that I think that those of us who are biohackers will sit up and pay attention to. This thing called AIP. It stands for the atherogenic index of plasma. AIP, atherogenic index of plasma. And what it is, it's a ratio of triglycerides to the very low density lipoproteins. So we all know about cholesterol, but generally we've gotten a bad story. The most cholesterol is not all that problematic, but the very low density, the very large, fluffy molecules that are very small particle sizes, those are called VDL or VLDL sometimes. Those are the ones that cause a lot of trouble. We've known for a while, and they seem to be some of the drivers of oxidative stress and glycation and even insulin resistance. Well, these researchers looked at almost 8,000 participants, well split between men and women, about 50% each, all above 45 years old, and found that there was a very strong correlation between this ratio, this AIP, triglycerides over VLDL, to cognitive health. And they measured a longitudinal group and a prospective group, retrospective and prospective. So let me see, I have the numbers here for you. So of the group they were following, they had about 37% of them, about 3,000 of the 8,000, developed cognitive impairments over a 7-year period of time. And a higher AIP, higher ratio of triglycerides to the VDL showed increased risks, very strong increased risks. What seems to be interesting, they looked at a kind of a split half and a mean, and they found that right around a third on that AIP, right around 0.33, that was the mean value for the population. And if you were below that, it seemed to be a threshold event, and there was very low risk for even having some elevated triglycerides, which we know is not that great for atherosclerosis and cardiac issues and brain issues, strokes, bleeds, etc. But below a third seems to be actually a threshold. And then there's this nonlinear escalation where above a third is a very strong risk. And then as you get to like 3/4 and above, the increase, if you will, risk dropped off again. So it seems to be that there's this sensitivity to the system where a little bit of triglycerides are not reacted to, a little more destabilize things aggressively and cause all of the cognitive changes over time. Hey, Casey J, thanks for joining. Nice to see you. So AIP, the atherogenic index of plasma, the ratio of triglycerides to VLDL. So check that out, because that's something you probably can calculate yourself. Next time you get a lipid panel, make sure you're getting the VLDLs or the VDLs, they're often called, and the expanded panels, and get your triglycerides and do the math. 1/3, be below 1/3 in particles. We are happy you're here too, KCJ. So one of the big findings here that kind of ties into the last couple of weeks is that the triglycerides and the oxidative stress and the oxidation of fats is actually a big piece of what drives insulin resistance, right? Inflammation driving insulin resistance, sugar driving inflammation, kind of a vicious cycle. Well, now we know this is another piece of it, because dietary fat, if you ate a lot of cholesterol, a lot of saturated fats, you wouldn't necessarily drive up VDLs and triglycerides. But if you ate a lot of sugar and starch, you would. So it's starting to click into place that if you keep your dietary sugars and starches relatively low, you're less likely to drive triglycerides up to a 1-to-3 ratio against your VDLs, which is where things start to fall apart pretty quickly. All right, so that was my second point for the week. And my third, was kind of interested in. There was a study in JAMA Neurology last week that talked about automated imaging, really AI, machine learning on imaging. And they did a study with 645 participants with various Parkinsonian phenomena. Now, if you know people with Parkinson's, there are some characteristic phenomena of Parkinson's itself: rigidity, tremor, gait issues, micrographia, reduced face expressions, stuff like that. But there's positive symptoms like tremor. There's negative symptoms like small handwriting or reduced movement, bradykinesia, tardikinesia, moving fast, moving slow. They can both be a thing. So we have these different symptoms, and the Parkinsonian phenomena, because they deal with dopaminergic neurons, which control a lot of stuff, can look very different one to the next. And not all sort of forms of Parkinsonian stuff are the same. And it can often be really important to distinguish what we're dealing with, because the treatment modalities are different, the progression is different, the kind of support you might need can be very, very different. And so a couple of the big ones would be PSP and MSA. PSP is progressive supranuclear palsy, and MSA is multiple system atrophy. And these are forms of Parkinsonian disorders, of which Parkinson's itself is another disorder. And clinicians are not really good at distinguishing them. You're very likely just to get a Parkinson's disorder diagnosis if you walk into a neurologist or even a geriatrician's office with tremor, with rigidity, with a few features. Many things look Parkinsonian that are not quite Parkinson's. And so it's important to distinguish what you're dealing with. And clinicians have a rate that is somewhat good, but not great. Like a specialist in Parkinson's phenomena can distinguish the pathology at all, the presence of, are you sick? Do you have a Parkinsonian phenomena? Do you have the Parkinsonian stuff? About 86% of the time, look at the stats here. 81.6. So about 4 out of 5 times clinicians can get to a Parkinsonian diagnosis that's in the right ballpark. And they looked at AI using computerized analysis of MRI images for the same population of people, and the stats were 93.9% accurate, an increase of over 12% compared to skilled clinicians in this space, just using computerized screening. Very, very important. And then check this out. So clinicians are good at saying it's Parkinsonian, at least 4 out of 5 of the times they can. But the AI could pick out Parkinson's versus atypical Parkinson's without all the classic symptoms. And the AI did that at a 95% confidence interval. AI could do MSA versus PSP at 95%. Oh, sorry. The PD versus atypical is 96. The MSA versus PSP is 98%. Parkinson's versus MSA, 98%. And Parkinson's versus PSP, 98%. And all these have confidence intervals around 95% or so, with the range running 0.96 up to about 1. So these are like nearly perfect findings off of imaging. Very, very impressive. So, this is simply a 3T MRI and machine vector learning. This is not like some crazy next-gen AI. These are not some incredibly hard to access MRI machines. These are 3T machines. Probably, I didn't look at the study imaging that closely. Was it MP RAID? I think it was diffusion MRI that they're doing. So it's a slightly complicated process in terms of the algorithm, but it's a 3T machine. A lot of magnets have had, a lot of hospitals have 3T magnets now. I did my work at McLean Hospital before grad school, working in the MRI center. We had Dr. Mike Henry, and there were several magnets in that room or that building. And there was a 3T, there was a 4T, there was even like a 12 or 16T for like animal research, a little tiny bore. But a 4T or even a 3.5T, in this case a 3T, which is not super modern anymore, is a very powerful magnet and something you can feel if you have any like fillings in your body. You can kind of feel the magnet coming at you. So huge performance gains in this machine learning compared to traditional experts deeply trained in these populations. So I think that could be really crucial for medication planning, screening, all kinds of support. Because remember, aging is not so much about stopping aging; it's about compressing morbidity. So if you catch things early, we have for most aging things, we don't really have disease modifying treatments. We have symptom modifying. Sometimes we have trajectory modifying, and these might be those sorts of things. We know that in the case of like Lewy body dementia, which is another Parkinsonian phenomena, the edges of the Lewy bodies themselves become glycated or oxidized through sugar. And that's a very rapid progressive phenomena with the oxidative stress. And we would probably assume the AIP is super high in that environment because we have essentially high oxidized sugars as well. So triglycerides in the body will be high. So it's all kind of fitting together that we may want to think about doing some lower carb, higher protein, moderate fat kind of lifestyles to live well. So I'm feeling a little pudgy. Who wants to do a challenge with me to do a bunch of like metabolic biohacking with fat loss and fasting and macronutrient partitioning? Just let me know. I'll do a group or something. So do me a favor, guys. Let's see. El Chatterino, flatten the curve so it's at the very end. Yeah, exactly. So instead of dying gradually for 30 years, you flatten it and then you die all at once. Now, generally that happens. There's this thing called terminal drop, which tends to be a rapid decline of resources in the last couple of years of life. And you'll see it often in elders, especially if they've experienced a lot of wear and tear, a lot of head injuries, a lot of diabetes. You'll see this drop in function that happens somewhat suddenly between age 78 and 88, usually. Somewhere in there's a really quick dip. Doesn't mean they're going to die, but usually it's a huge setback in function. And often it progresses to death within a couple of years. It's pretty high likelihood. So, avoid everything up until that last bit is the idea. And if you can avoid a lot of these risk factors, maybe you'll slide into home plate, being cognitively at your peak anyways. We would hope. So guys, thanks for hanging out with me tonight while I did some neurofeedback and talked about some research articles. Feel free to ask more questions, but I wanted to remind you to please give this channel a like and subscribe, share a video with your friends, find another video and comment on it. YouTube loves if the videos get shared around as well. So if you want other particular topics covered, please let me know. If you would like to look at your brain, I have a special deal both in our physical offices and remote. You can do unlimited in the office for $250 with Peak Brain in New York City, LA, Orange County, or St. Louis. You can do discount brain maps in Stockholm and London. For instance, in London, they are 175 quid for a discount brain map if you mention this special or just ask me. And we have US wide. They're not unlimited, but it's a one-off. You can do a brain map to your home. We'll send you equipment. Live coaches will guide you in gathering EEGs. And then you and I can talk about that. We're having a very, very deep special through the end of March. So you might be able to get in under the wire there for another week. Those are only $1,000, and you can apply that towards a neurofeedback program if you choose one in the future. So there's my pitch for Peak Brain and for getting us to help you with your brain coaching needs. Please take good care of those brains and let me know if I can support your journey in any way, or you have any questions about this biohacking stuff. I'm always here. Free consults are always available. You can get the link in the show notes, and check it in the link in the description if you want to chat some more. Happy to talk at any point. Just grab some time on my schedule. So guys, hope you're doing well tonight, and wherever you are watching this live or in the future, take good care of yourself and let me know how I can support you in your health and wellness journey. Take care.